Welcome to Talks of Life, where
Right.
we explore ideas that can help us, live a more meaningful life.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be exploring a book called Man's Search for Meaning
Oh, great.
by Viktor Frankl. And I think this is a book that a lot of people have heard of,
Yeah.
but maybe haven't read yet. And
Yeah.
it's really fascinating because
Yeah.
it comes from kind of an unexpected place for a philosophy of living, you know?
Right.
It comes from Viktor Frankl's experiences in Nazi concentration camps during World War II.
I think it's remarkable, right, how such a philosophy can come from such a place of suffering.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of what makes it so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, that even in these direst circumstances, Frankl saw that,
Yeah.
Individuals still had a choice to succumb to despair or to find a reason to keep going.
Oh, that's so powerful. And that's really the heart of his philosophy, is it?
Yes.
It's called logotherapy.
Yes.
And I think that's a term that can sound a little bit intimidating to people. So
Right.
I'd love if you could kind of unpack that for us a little bit. What is logotherapy?
Sure. Logotherapy basically is centered on this idea that humans have this inherent drive to find meaning.
Okay.
And it suggests that we're not primarily driven by pleasure, as Freud believed,
Okay.
nor by a will to power, as Adler proposed.
Okay.
But instead, it's this will to meaning, this search for purpose that truly motivates us.
Mm-hmm.
This is what gets us out of bed in the morning,
Right.
What fuels our passions, what helps us to persevere through difficult times.
So it's not about just like being happy all the time.
Right.
Because I think sometimes people think, oh, I need to find my purpose so I can be happy all the time.
Exactly.
But that's not what this is about.
No, not at all. And
Right.
Frankl actually talked about this concept called the existential vacuum.
Hmm.
And this is a feeling of emptiness and lack of purpose that can hit us even when things seem to be going well on the outside.
Yeah.
You can have everything.
Totally.
You can have the good job, the relationship, the house, the money, and still feel this emptiness.
Yeah. I think we've all felt that at some point, that feeling of like,
Yeah,
okay, I've got all this stuff, but like, what's the point?
exactly. And that's exactly. And so Frankl observed that this existential vacuum can manifest in a bunch of different ways. So
Yeah.
boredom, depression, aggression,
Oh, well.
even addiction.
Okay.
So it's like we're trying to fill this void with all these distractions
Mm-hmm.
instead of actually confronting the deeper issue of the lack of meaning.
Okay. So if we're feeling that sense of emptiness,
Yeah,
that lack of meaning,
right, right.
and sometimes it can be really hard to pinpoint it too.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
How do we combat that? Like, what are some of the things that Frankl observed in his, very, very specific situation that could help us in our everyday lives?
Frankl, even amidst the horrors of these concentration camps,
Yeah.
witnessed firsthand the power of meaning.
Okay.
And he observed that those who could find a reason to keep going,
Yeah.
a purpose in their suffering, they were more likely to survive.
That's so mind-blowing. How can someone in a concentration camp,
Right.
possibly find meaning?
Yeah.
Like, how is that even possible?
Right, and that's really...
Like, what did that look like for them?
That's the power of the human spirit, and I think it's so incredible because they found meaning in all these unexpected ways.
Yeah.
So, for example, there was a prisoner who imagined himself giving a lecture
Mm.
about his experiences in the camp.
Oh, wow.
And so in this way, he was transforming his suffering into an object of study.
yeah.
So even in that horrific environment,
Mhm.
he found this drive to create, to make something meaningful out of his experience.
Wow.
Absolutely. And it wasn't always about these grand achievements or,
Yeah.
big things.
Huh.
Sometimes it was very simple things that gave them a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
There's a story of a prisoner who found solace just in the image of his wife,
Yeah.
even though he didn't even know if she was alive or not.
Oh.
But that love, that connection, gave him something to hold on to.
It's amazing how these, seemingly small things can become such anchors
Right.
in those kinds of situations.
Exactly. And there's another story of a young woman
Okay.
who found solace in a chestnut tree that she would see every day, and to her it was a symbol of eternal life.
Wow.
So,
So it's like finding meaning in nature, finding meaning in connection,
Yeah.
and finding meaning in, the love for someone else. Like,
exactly.
there's so many different avenues
Yeah.
that people found.
And what's so powerful about these stories is that in the face of this unimaginable suffering,
Yeah.
it's like they tapped into something deep within themselves, something that allowed them to transcend their circumstances.
Yeah.
And Frankl believed This is the essence of the human spirit.
Mhm.
This will to meaning, this defiant power of the human spirit that allows us to rise above our circumstances, to find a reason to keep going, even when all seems lost.
That's incredible.
And, he even talked about this idea called new dynamics.
Okay.
And it's basically this tension between who we are and who we could become as this driving force behind our search for meaning.
Okay.
And it's in that striving, that
Yeah.
reaching for our potential, that
Yeah.
we truly come alive.
So it's not just about enduring hardship, but it's like
Exactly.
using that hardship to fuel
Right.
your own growth and your own evolution
Right.
as a person.
Precisely. And Frankl believed this applied to all of us,
Okay.
not just those facing these extreme situations.
Right. So even if our challenges aren't as,
Yeah,
dire or horrific as what was going on in the concentration camps,
exactly.
this idea of finding meaning in our struggles still applies.
Absolutely. We all face hardships in life, loss, disappointment, setbacks.
No.
It's how we choose to respond to those challenges that really defines our experience. And Frankl emphasized that we always have a choice.
Okay.
He called this the last of the human freedoms. This freedom to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances.
So even when we feel like we have no control,
Right.
we still have control over our attitude, over our outlook.
Exactly.
And
It's a powerful reminder, especially when things feel overwhelming.
yeah.
And Frankl argued that, it's in that space between stimulus and response, that gap where we have that ability to choose our attitude.
Yeah.
That's where our power lies.
So we're not just like reacting to life, but we're actually shaping our experience
Exactly.
through the choices we make,
You got it.
even in how we respond to challenges.
It's not about avoiding suffering altogether,
Right.
because let's face it, that's impossible.
Yeah.
It's about finding meaning in our experiences, even the difficult ones.
Okay, hold on. Finding meaning in suffering, can you
Sure.
help me understand that a little bit more? Because that seems
Right.
kind of counterintuitive.
Of course, Frankl wasn't suggesting that we should enjoy suffering or pretend that it's not painful. He was saying that within suffering,
Yeah.
we can find a reason to endure,
Okay.
a purpose that transcends the pain itself.
So it's like finding the why,
Exactly.
the reason to keep going,
Right.
even when the how seems unbearable.
Exactly. He gives this example of a man who was consumed by grief
Okay.
after losing his wife. And Frankl asked him, he said, "What if you had died first? Wouldn't your wife have suffered greatly?"
Oh, wow.
And this man realized that by enduring his pain,
Yeah.
he was sparing his wife from that same suffering.
Wow, that kind of reframes grief in a whole new way.
It does.
It's almost like suffering can be a form of sacrifice,
Right.
a way to protect someone that you love.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about, that prisoner who volunteered
Yes.
for the typhus ward.
Yes.
Even though it was so dangerous,
Right.
he could have protected himself, but instead he found meaning in
Right.
caring for others, even at his own risk.
Right. And Frankl saw countless examples of what he called this attitudinal heroism. These people choosing to find purpose and meaning in their actions, even amidst these horrors.
Wow.
It's like they weren't just trying to survive, they were actively choosing how to live,
Yeah.
even in these dire circumstances.
Yeah.
And that's Frankl's point,
Yeah.
We always have that choice. Even in the face of unimaginable suffering,
Yeah.
it's this inner freedom that no one can take away from us.
This is really making me think about it, not just as like surviving tough times, but like
Right.
living with intention, even when things are falling apart.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that even when we feel powerless,
Yeah.
we still have this power to choose our attitude, to find a reason to keep going,
Yeah.
to find meaning, even in the darkest of places.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's not just about, like enduring suffering, but it's about actively searching for meaning
Right.
within our experiences, even the painful ones. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Sorry,
They're like,
yeah.
wait a minute, like, how am I supposed to find meaning
Right.
in something that is so difficult?
Yeah.
So is there like a roadmap? Like, how do we actually do that?
Well, I wish there was a simple step-by-step guide, but Frankl didn't really offer that.
Okay.
But he did outline 3 main avenues
Okay.
to manner.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So one is creative work,
Okay.
another is experiential values,
Okay.
and then the third one is attitudinal values.
Okay. So let's unpack those a little bit.
Yeah.
What did he mean by creative work?
So creative work is about contributing something to the world, leaving your mark.
Okay.
However big or small, It could be writing a book,
Yeah.
building a business, inventing a new technology, or even something as simple as crafting a beautiful piece of furniture.
Yeah, so it's like using our talents and skills
Exactly.
to create something new, something outside of ourselves that
Right.
will maybe even outlast us.
Exactly. It's really about the act of creation itself.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a masterpiece.
Yeah,
Even small acts of creation can be deeply meaningful.
right, like baking a loaf of bread,
Exactly.
for your family, or writing a poem,
Exactly.
or, even fixing a broken appliance. Like,
Yeah.
there's something about that sense of accomplishment,
Exactly.
of bringing something new into being
You got it.
that feels really meaningful.
Right.
Okay, so that's creative work. What about experiential values?
So this is about finding meaning in love relationships
Okay.
and the beauty around us, those moments of joy, connection, and awe that make life worth living.
Yeah, I love that because it's really about savoring those moments of
Right.
connection with loved ones, or appreciating art that moves us,
Right.
or being in awe of nature. Like, it's really about being present and engaged
Exactly.
with the world around us.
Precisely. And it's a reminder that meaning isn't always about striving or achieving. Sometimes it's about simply being connecting, appreciating.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so that's experiential values. And then the third one was
Attitudinal values.
attitudinal values. This
Yeah.
one feels a little more
Right.
challenging,
It is.
especially given the context of, Frankl's experiences.
Right.
So how can we find meaning in unavoidable suffering?
Right. Well, Frankl wasn't suggesting that we should seek out suffering
Okay.
or pretend that it's enjoyable,
Right.
but he was acknowledging that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience.
Yeah.
We can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But even in the face of suffering, even when we can't change our circumstances, we always have the power to choose our attitude, to find a reason to keep going.
I keep thinking back to those prisoners who found meaning in the camps.
Right.
And I'm thinking about, some of them found it in these acts of defiance.
Yes.
Like that prisoner who chose not to be broken after becoming paralyzed.
Exactly. He could have given up,
Yeah.
succumbed to despair. Right.
But instead, he chose to find meaning in that situation,
Yeah.
to focus on what he could still control.
Right.
His attitude, his inner world.
It's so inspiring to see that even in those, horrific conditions,
Right.
people were still able to hold on to their dignity, their
Yeah.
sense of self.
Absolutely. And that's really the core of attitudinal values.
Right.
It's about finding that inner strength,
Yeah.
that resilience to face whatever life throws at us. It's about recognizing that even in suffering,
Yeah.
there can be growth, there can be transformation.
This is starting to feel so much bigger than just surviving a concentration camp.
Right.
This is about how we live our lives every day.
That's what Frankl intended.
Okay.
He believed that logotherapy, this search for meaning,
Yeah.
was relevant to everyone,
Okay.
not just those facing these extreme situations.
So whether it's, finding meaning in our work,
Right.
our relationships,
Yeah.
the way we face challenges, the way we appreciate the beauty around us,
Exactly.
even the way we suffer.
Like, it's about living a life that's intentional,
Yes.
a life that's rich with meaning, even when it's full of challenges.
You've got it. Frankl talked about the importance of new dynamics.
Yeah.
That tension between who we are and who we could become.
Yeah.
And he believed that it's in that striving, that gap between our current selves and our potential, that we really discover and create meaning.
It's like we're constantly evolving,
Yeah.
reaching for something more,
Exactly.
something beyond our current limitations.
Right.
And it's in that process of growth,
Right.
of self-transcendence,
Yeah.
that we find meaning.
Exactly. It's a lifelong journey, a process of discovery.
Yeah.
And, each individual has to find their own unique path, their own why to live for.
And that's a big question, right?
It is.
How do we actually find our why?
Right.
Where do we even begin?
That is a great question. And Frankl offers this really powerful thought experiment to help us on this journey of self-discovery. He suggests we imagine ourselves on our deathbeds looking back on our lives.
Wow.
What would we be most proud of?
Yeah.
What would we regret?
That's a powerful image, but it's also kind of daunting
It is.
to think about,
Right.
But I can also see how it could be really clarifying.
It can be a way to cut through all the noise of everyday life and get to the heart of what really matters.
Right.
If we were to look back from that perspective,
Yeah.
what would make our lives feel worthwhile?
It's funny. When we first started talking about man's search for meaning,
Hey.
I was a little intimidated.
Yeah.
because, it's a book written by a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust.
Right.
It felt kind of heavy,
Right.
but what we've uncovered today is actually incredibly hopeful and empowering.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Frankl took his experience of profound suffering
Yeah.
and transformed it into a powerful message for all of humanity.
Yeah.
He showed us that even in the darkest of times, there's this light within us, that spark of meaning that can never be extinguished.
It's like he's saying, look, I survived this.
Right.
You can survive life's challenges too.
Exactly.
And more than that, you can find meaning in them, grow from them, be transformed by them.
Well said.
It's so incredible to think about the people who not only survived the camps, but thrived afterward.
Right.
Went on to live really meaningful lives.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what was that difference?
Yeah.
Between those who just, completely gave up hope and those who found a way to keep going.
Well, Frankl observed that, those who lost hope, who succumbed to that despair and meaninglessness,
Yeah.
they were more likely to perish. He even witnessed what he termed the mass neurotic triad in the camps.
Okay.
So depression, aggression, and addiction. And he believed that these were all, symptoms of that existential vacuum that we were talking about.
So in a way, meaninglessness was almost as dangerous
Right.
as the physical threats that they faced?
Exactly. He saw a direct correlation between a lack of meaning and a decline in their physical and mental well-being.
Wow. It makes you think about those same things, depression, aggression, addiction,
Right.
that are so prevalent in our society today. Could it be that a lot of people are grappling with this same sense of meaninglessness?
That's what Frankl argued. He felt that modern society, with its focus on, material comfort and instant gratification,
Yeah.
often overlooks our deeper need for meaning and purpose.
Right. It's like we're chasing all these external things, thinking that's going to bring us happiness.
Right.
But we're kind of missing this essential piece of the puzzle,
Exactly.
which is that internal sense of purpose.
Right. And that's where logotherapy comes in.
Okay.
It's about helping people to reconnect with their inner compass, rediscovering those things that give their lives direction and meaning.
So it's less about telling people what their meaning should be and more about giving them the tools to discover it.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all answer
Yeah.
when it comes to meaning. Each individual has to find their own unique why, the things that truly resonate with their values and aspirations.
So it's like we each have this internal compass,
Right.
and logotherapy is kind of helping us learn how to use that compass to navigate
Exactly.
life.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And thinking back to, those who found meaning in the camps, it just reinforces this idea that meaning can be found in the most unexpected places.
When we first started talking about this book, Man's Search for Meaning,
Right.
I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated.
Yeah.
A book written by a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It felt pretty heavy.
Right.
But what we've uncovered today has been so surprisingly hopeful and empowering.
It is, isn't it? Frankl took his experience of profound suffering and transformed it into this really powerful message for all of humanity.
He really did.
And he showed us that even in the darkest times, there's this light within us, this spark of meaning that can never be extinguished.
Yeah, like he's saying, look, I survived this. You can survive life's challenges too.
Exactly.
And more than that, you can find meaning in them, grow from them, be transformed by them.
Well said.
It's beautiful. And as we wrap up this episode of Talks of Life, I think it's fitting to leave our listeners with one of Frankl's quotes.
Okay.
He said, "Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life, and not a secondary rationalization of instinctual drives. This meaning is unique and specific in that it must be individually and personally discovered and acted upon."
That's so good.
I love that quote because it really is a reminder that it's a personal journey,
Right.
and the responsibility to find and create that meaning lies within each of us.
Absolutely. It's this process of self-discovery, of aligning our actions with our values, and finding purpose even amidst life's inevitable challenges.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through Frankl's work today. I think this has been such a rich and insightful conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners out there, the search for meaning is a lifelong journey. So keep exploring, keep striving, and keep living a life that's true to yourself and to what you believe in.
Yes.
And until next time, Talks of Life, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep living a life that's full of purpose and meaning.